So it's recording, so we don't have to worry about that. So I usually start by saying thank you, first of all, for agreeing to be interviewed. Inspire One is a magazine to educate, engage, and energize our community. I say our community, I'm talking specifically about community of color, Black, Hispanic, all communities of color. The birth of this is because I felt like we didn't have a voice in any community. When you look at magazines, I mean, we do have African American Pride, and I salute Mr. Morris because he's been doing it for 17 years. But his path is more of a celebratory, like who got into the organizations, who won this award, who won that award. If you look at this is more about issues that we face and how we can educate our parents and loved ones and whomever of just a different mindset of what's going on with these issues. So that's the focus of mine. We both, Pride and Aspire One, can walk side by side. You know, I hope he keeps continuing to do it. And I always shut down people who say, oh, you're trying to replace the Pride. No, we have enough room in our community for more than just one magazine. So this is the first issue. Like I said, the second issue is about women of color, you know. And of course, you know, I was raised by one, married to one, know a whole bunch of them and everything. But I'm just excited about this next issue because it's actually been a little bit different than this one. Trying to find the right women to speak, you know. So this is not just happenstance. I actually strategically picked you all, and you asked that question, how did I get in? Because I went through and I wanted certain people, and I looked on, I found something on your page or saw something that you were new into administration. Mm-hmm. So that's why I really wanted you. I knew Tara, so her and I have been friends, and these two over here, we walked years together for many years. So, you know, I was at church with her, and then I made church with her and talked with her, and so I knew their background. So I wanted to get their perspective and then a newer perspective. And my Aunt Eloise would have been here, but she had to set up for a women's luncheon. So she was kind of bummed about it. So I guess we can just go ahead and start. And I'm sorry I didn't send the questions, but that was planned because I didn't want to. And see, like all that would be cut out, so they won't.
You get what you get.
Cut that out. So when I ask these questions, anybody feel free, you can answer. There's no certain person, and we'll go until you finish, and we'll move on. So everybody's in administration, whether assistant principal or principal. Was your primary goal in life to become a teacher? Was that your primary goal?
That was mine.
It was mine. Yes.
It was not my primary goal. I actually started out as a communication news media major, and in talking to family, realized that it would be really difficult to get a job. And I always loved kids, always enjoyed being around kids, and I thought it was just something that I would try, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my first choice.
Okay, so, and before we move on, just let us know where you graduated from. Let me start there.
So I got my bachelor's from Salisbury University, and then I got a master's in school counseling from Wilmington. So.
Okay.
I got my bachelor's at Salisbury University and my master's in educational leadership at Salisbury as well.
Well, I'm a Towson alum, so my bachelor's degree is from Towson University, and my master's in educational administration from Salisbury.
And I'm a Carolina girl, and my bachelor's is from Elizabeth City State University in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. My master's is from Wilmington University in school counseling, and my doctorate is from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore in educational leadership.
Great. So, when you started teaching, did you all have any aspirations to become administrators or principals? Was that even a thought?
I did not.
I did not either.
I didn't, not at that point.
No, I wanted to be a helper, and I knew as a teacher, kids were always coming to me for advice, and I saw myself in the helping profession. So, but when you're working in school counseling, especially at the high school level, that job oftentimes mirrors administration, and that's how I found myself into the administrative part of it.
Well, my journey was probably a little bit different in the sense that as a classroom teacher, actually here at West Salisbury a lot of years ago, I ended up being the teacher leader. I planned the field trips, I planned all those types of things. I was a leader on the team and would even come in the summer and volunteer with my principal at that point and do just different tasks for her. So I think, I'm not sure I found it, it kind of found me, in a sense.
You talk about helping and people, when you think back, people who maybe motivated you or pushed you, or, and I'm free to say this, prayed for you, who comes to mind? Who's like the first person that comes to mind as that one person that said, you know what, if it hadn't been for that person, I wouldn't be where I am.
I don't know if you all know Pastor Teresa Scott.
I know who she
Yeah,
is.
I attended a lot of her workshops, women's workshops, and it was encouraging and kind of helped improve my self-confidence. And then I had a lot of people in the county and my principal who kind of pushed me along and put me in leadership roles, which inspired me.
I say Lil Giddens. Lil was my principal when I taught here at West Salisbury, and she was the one I'd come in and do things for. But I tell Lil all the time before she retired that she was absolutely the reason that I'm a school administrator today.
Yeah, I had my principal at Washington when I was in the guidance department, and the vice principal both kept saying, "You are admin, you are going to take my place." And I'm like, "No, I'm going to be a counselor. No, no, no." But they just kept pushing me, and then we had a VP who went out on paternity leave, and they asked me to kind of be like a sub and fill in that position, and I kind of like fell in love with it. So that was kind of the beginning of it.
When I think about all of my principals, they were all really aspiring me to become a leader. They would push me, giving me leadership opportunities. But one in particular is Mark Record, who I know that you know. It was working with him, and he gave me a lot of leadership responsibilities. And I remember there would be days where he would literally be at the computer typing, and I was standing over his shoulder feeding him information, and we were feeding each other information as we were going through the accreditation process. And I just learned so much from him as a principal, and there were things that, my primary goal is to try to inspire other leaders the way he inspired me to go into leadership.
So have probably more for Melvin and Kim, and you all can weigh in as well. From the start of your career until now, I know there have been changes. If you can think of the different changes, do you see them working favorably for our children? When I say our children, I'm talking about minority students. Or do you think things are getting a little bit worse? And you all can, if you see.
When I look at my role as a vice principal, when I was a vice principal for 10 years at another school in Worcester County, I don't know if I can name names, but at a school in Worcester County, in working with those students, the African American students really wanted an African American or someone to push them. And wherever you took them, they were very receptive. They wanted that mentorship. Now in my role as principal, working with, once again, African American students, I'm getting kind of the hands up. I really don't want to be singled out as an African American. I want to be able to blend in and be like my peers. So I feel like it's getting harder for me to honestly reach the African Americans as I have in the past. And I don't know if it's because my role has changed or it's because I'm in a different school where the demographics are different. So that concerns me a lot.
It's interesting because when I started 37 years ago, and 37 years ago, parents were different. And so what we were getting in our buildings looked different. And so today, my concern is that with the way parenting is happening, what we're getting is different, but I also feel like I spend as much time parenting parents as we do working with kids. And, I've been around long enough that now I have the students of the kids I taught as first graders. And so, but because of relationship, I can still deal with those families and still deal with those parents, but I'm working in the same community that I taught in, and so I'm back here in this same community, which has helped me because it's the kids and these families haven't left the community. These kids, the parents grew up in this community, and now their kids are growing up in the same community. And so, interestingly enough, the support we're getting from home is different. In 30 years, that level of support has changed. And it's changed because the home has changed. The makeup of the home is different. The expectations of what happens at home is different. And is it better? In some cases, yes. In other cases, it's not. But it's definitely different. Then we also have that generation or those homes where grandparents are raising kids. So you have a lot of that, more than you did 30 years ago when we started. And so, the whole home family dynamic has truly changed, which definitely impacts school.
Nessa brings up a good point. It kind of, I think back, when I can edit this part, but when Kim was real young, and she's like 6 years older than me. So I think back.
That is not true. Okay.
This is an ongoing war we have. Kim is
I'm
actually,
1 year and 1 week older than you.
1 year, 1 week.
Yeah.
Yeah, he never lets me forget it.
Heck, Sam, you're older than I thought. That's like
Well, yeah.
You gotta edit a lot out there.
Well, I have no idea how old you are. None at all. So. Older than me.
I love it.
I want to keep this light, but I want to be educational as well. But I think about when we grew up, how we had so much support, like, from a parent. Even if you didn't have both parents, you had aunts. Even if you didn't have all the aunts, you had it was just seemed like I can remember this day. My grandma said, "Come on in, y'all, get your lessons. Gotta get your lessons together." And you say that now, kids probably look at you like, "Well, that's not what you're talking about." But we knew what it meant.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with someone talking about the difference in the 70s babies versus babies now that are growing up. And I just don't know. Is it good? Is it better? Is it worse? I really, and that you said something made me think about it. Are we doing better? Are we doing worse?
So the word that I use when I think about parenting, and Mel was talking about parenting and the way in which parents are different. The disconnect I find is the word pride. When I was growing up, we were poor. It was a single parent home. It was a grandmother raising us. Those are all the things that people say are stacked against you. But in my home, with all of those factors, it was a very loving home. It was a very safe environment. There was pride in our home. My grandmother always made sure we had what we needed. We didn't realize how poor we were until we became adults. And I look at kids now who still have those maybe limited resources, but parents often, some of them, are looking for someone to give them something, some kid looking for you to feel sorry for them. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know the environment I come out of. And it's harder for kids to rise above their circumstances. It's harder for parents to rise above their circumstances. And I don't know when that happened. I don't even know why it happened and how we get around it. But that's the thing that I don't feel as if we have as much pride as we used to have in ourselves, in our culture, in our community. So that's a disconnect for me.
Look, a lot of people really kind of connect pride with material things. If I don't have this
Yeah.
like the people across the street, then I have nothing to be proud of,
Yeah.
and which isn't true. You know, growing up, Daddy used to always he used to tell us that we were poor. We never felt poor. If we were, we never felt it,
Yeah.
because we had a strong family. We had a strong family life, good values, and we were just proud to be who we were, and so you don't see that a lot anymore. And you know, I tell parents, I'm a single mother. When they tell me I'm a single mother, I'm a single mother, and so that's not an excuse. My kids have done well, because having excuses was never an option. And there are too many kids, even at the level that I work at, that have a million excuses about everything. I can't do that. I'm not smart. I can't read. And, you know, we didn't allow kids to use even that terminology 30 years ago or even 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, you know, when people are talking about, but parents are young, we were young and we were parents, and we didn't do that. And so age has absolutely nothing in my mind to do with it, because a good parent can be 15 or a good parent can be 50. It doesn't really matter.
And you brought up a good point. Excuses. I find our community dwelling in excuses a lot. You know, people, when I was growing up, people thought we had everything, but that was further from the truth, because my dad was a seasonal worker. So he did concrete. So in the wintertime, yeah, he made a lot in the summer and the spring, but winter, there was nothing. So, but we made it work. And I don't see that in our community anymore. We don't make it work. You know, we hit a brick wall, it's like, oh, you know what? I'm just, you know, and then it trickles down to how the children respond in schools. You know, I bring this story up, which will lead into the next question. Sam goes to Pemberton, and I can add this part out. And before he went to Pemberton, he was always gung-ho, you know, always wanted to, you know. And then the first week, oh, well, I can't do that because I'm not smart. I said, well, you know me, because education is everything to me. I said, well, who told you you weren't smart? Well, they said that we weren't. I said, who told you? And then I guess he heard over a conversation that one of the teachers was saying to another young black boy that if he doesn't change, he will never amount. I don't know how it went, but I'm assuming from, and being he's young, he saw that. Okay, you see a white, you know, of course I'm gonna edit this. You see a white teacher talking to a black boy saying that you won't amount to anything unless you change. What's the first thing another black boy's gonna see?
That's me.
That's me, because you're talking to someone that looks like me. And it took us about a month to really change. So I thought that made me think. My wife and I, we work hard to make sure that his mindset is different. But what about those homes where, you know, you don't, that will happen, and then the parents may be working two jobs. I'm not saying it's the parents' fault, but they're working these jobs, not really connected with the child.
Or she doesn't know the value of speaking life into her child, and or doesn't feel confident enough to speak life into her
Because
child. Their own insecurities. You know, we have so many people that come in our doors that did not have a good school experience themselves, so they're not as much of a help to us, and so, you know, we're dealing with that, and that's difficult. That is difficult, because you feel like you're spending as much time with the parent as you do with their kids.
And you know, and I think about different levels. So when I was in the classroom, I had the pleasure of doing summer school at Snow Hill Elementary School, and I said I would never. My Alva Reed got me into that. She said, "Oh, you can be the gym teacher." I said, "Okay." So the first day, he looked at me, and I was like, "Well, y'all don't look at him." I mean, crying. You know, so there's a difference. So I respect the elementary school levels, because there's a different anointing that goes on that.
That is the truth.
Because, I mean, you know, it's just like, my shoe was untied and he had a meltdown. I'm like, okay.
Let me tell you.
Let me just tell you, shoe.
Yeah.
But I know you all talk to other principals or other sister principals. Do you see if there's a big difference between levels still now, high school versus elementary? Do you all talk about different situations, or is it the same? I don't know.
I think all levels have their challenges.
Mhm.
I think it's the way in which we deal with them. I've been in high school for quite a while. I've never been in elementary school. But I feel like, those high school students, although some days they want to be adults, most days they want to be loved on and hugged and high-fived, just like the little ones do. And that's the way I interact with them. I tell them I love them. We hug every day. And I think that's what we have to do. I always tell my teachers that regardless of what's happening at home or outside of school, we have to do our best in the 7.5 hours we have the kids in our building. We may not erase what's happening outside, but we can make it a safe and nurturing environment for them right in this building. And we can do something possibly to change, their outlook on life. But I tell them, don't miss that opportunity. Yeah.
So being new administrators, or fairly new, what have been some of your challenges that you, because Christy, you're just for 2 years, right?
2 years.
So, and Tara, this is your third
Third,
year?
mhm.
Okay, so what have been some of your challenges as a new administrator moving from your previous position to now?
I think for me, really just kind of going back to what you guys were talking about before, is seeing the entitlement of children and the support of their parents with this entitlement has been like such a difficult thing for me, because although I'm very young, I was raised very old school, so I'm kind of still really old school. And when I tell you to sit down, I expect you to sit down at that moment, not when you walk around and finish your conversation. And when I call the parent and say, such and such happened, and they're like, well, what did the other kid do? Or what did the other kid get? Like, your concern should be your child. And why are we having this conversation at this point? So that has been really my biggest challenge, is understanding like the entitlement and how we're setting these kids up to feel like they can do whatever they want to do and they're above any rule or law, which is, when they're an adult, they don't have mom to call and sit, defend for them. And they're going to have a rude awakening very soon, because it's okay at 6, it's okay at 10, and then they go to middle school and they're calling the resource officer and they're going out in handcuffs. You know what I mean? Like, and I just, that is like such a struggle for me, because I'm like, why don't you see, like, this is crazy. Like, why are we doing this? Why is it okay? Oh, because he talks to you that way. Oh, okay. And they're 10, they're 6. They don't understand how to code switch. I can act like this at home, but I can't do this at school. So it's a disservice to the child, like, all the way around. So that's my struggle.
What about you, Christy?
One of the challenges that I've experienced is, I'll just use the word, speaking life into the kids. When I'm speaking positive, say I have them in my office for a discipline concern, and I'm speaking life into them and saying, you're a great kid, you can do this, you can do that, and trying to give positive comments, the resistance is a challenge. No, I'm not good, or I don't believe that. I'm bad. I'm angry. That's been the biggest challenge for me. Just trying to encourage them, but then there's just this wall up. And for some of them, you can break it down through love. And then there's some that just have that anger that it's hard to get through to them.
And I know you all deal with a lot. I mean, you haven't, Kim, you brought up this 7.5 hours, but then you have, 18, almost 18, 17 hours rather, at home, away from you.
Absolutely.
So you got the 7.5, I know very well, you got the 7.5 hours, and then when they leave, that cycle of those 16.5, and then they come back. So what, Melvin, you gonna say?
But I try to tell my teachers that we see them more awake hours every day than their families do,
Sure.
which means our influence ought to be greater. Because you think if a kid gets off the bus after 4 o'clock, his mama's not going to be home till 6. So no matter where he is, his mother's not home till 6. By 9 o'clock, he's in the bed 3 hours. And maybe 1 hour in the morning. That's 4 hours. We see them almost twice that amount of time. Our impact ought to be greater. And so to me, that says that while they're here with us, we have got to do everything, as Christina said, to speak as much life into them as we can, but also to hold them accountable. Because unfortunately, the biggest issue I face day to day is that whole issue of accountability. You can't even own your actions. Baby, you did it. I mean, I can watch a kid terrorize a situation. He settles down, and then I want to talk to you. Now talk to me about what happened. What do you mean? I said I was sorry. So they feel no sense of ownership to that behavior. None. You call the parent feels no ownership. Well, as Tara said, what did the other kid do? The question I absolutely dislike. But what did the teacher do? I mean, come on. We're supposed to be the professionals. So the bottom line is, we talk to the teachers about making sure that when you deal with a kid, you're dealing fairly with the kid. Now, fair treatment doesn't mean equal treatment. It's what's fair for that student in that situation at that time. And so that's what has to happen on our end of the deal, on our side of what happens. But we also have to remember that it's not our side against the parents. It's that collaborative effort. We all have to work together, and sometimes it's hard to get that home buy-in. But if the staff does a good job and you don't have the home buy-in, we still can make some growth. So, I can't make the parent come and do and say, but certainly I can expect that teacher to come and do and say. And so that's all we have control over in this arena anyway.
And you brought up a good point, and I think this kind of moves into, you remember the church used to be the center hub of everything. And, I see it at our church. Even when I was at St. Paul, we struggle to get folks to bring their kids to Sunday school, to participate in that kind of arena, because somehow it switched. Oh, that's not important anymore. And again, Inspire One is faith-based, is based on that. So when did God stop being important? And, we see that. We see that all the time. And, that kind of trickles down into to education and the home life. I understand that. And I don't know the solution, but I know we know the problems, but don't know the solution.
When you talk about choice, and I'm all for giving kids choices, but there are some things that are non-negotiables. And when you have parents, a kid who says, "Mom, Dad, I want to go to church today," and they say, "Okay," that when you start saying no to those things, or you start allowing kids to get their way on those small things, then it just becomes bigger. And there's nothing wrong with giving kids choice. But I know, a lot of kids will say, well, I told my mom I didn't want to come. And she said it was fine. And that's where it starts. If you're not going to even make your child, or at least open the opportunity for them to grow spiritually, then they're probably more than likely not going to want to grow academically.
And that's a good point.
In those, it's just
Spiritual.
when you have to be able to have some kind of, I guess, ownership over your child. They have to know that if I say this as a parent, this is what's going to happen. But this choice and back and forth thing.
And it's interesting, when we were young, the reality was they didn't have to make us go to church because all our friends were at church. And so we went to see our friends.
That's
and
true.
because because everybody in our circle, all those kids went to church. And so that was really your social setting when we were young. And so you wanted to go. Nobody had to make us go. We were happy to go.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in the whole I generation,